So the restatement will have 4 parts. The first part deals with children and families, and it looks at the scope of parental authority, the limits on parental authority. It's aiming to develop a modern rationale for recognizing parents as legal actors who are responsible for their children and have a right to raise their children. So that part will deal with abuse and neglect, state intervention in families, and different areas in which parents both have obligations and rights in relation to their children.
One area that we are going to be looking at is parents' duties to protect children from harm generally. And in some of my preliminary research, what I have found is, how many cases there are where the state has intervened because the child suffered harm not at the hand of the parent. The parent did not engage in any type of abuse, but the parent failed to protect the child from harm at the hands of someone else. Sometimes that was harm by another parent, by the parent's intimate partner, or sometimes even by a stranger. We have to figure out, how do we balance parental rights to make decisions as to who is going to be supervising their children, and when the state is now going to determine that it has to take action because the parent has not provided the child with adequate and sufficient supervision.
I will be most focused on the children in schools and children in society. But one of the things about the project that has been really terrific, and I think will make it stronger as a final product, is that we're doing a lot of not only cross discussion, but sharing and connecting our work on sections. So, for example, I've been working on the portion addressing student discipline, so discipline in the schools, where there's also a long history of corporal punishment, as there has been in the context of children in families, parental discipline. But the modern rationale for disciplining children and allowing parents to use corporal punishment in the family context really don't apply at all in schools. As a matter of fact, they pull in the opposite direction.
Children in the justice system is the third part, and that part is going to capture a recent reform trend in the law that recognizes that juvenile offenders really are different from their adult counterparts, and that the response to juvenile crime on the part of the justice system should reflect those differences between juveniles and adults. The fourth part we are currently calling Children in Society, and it deals with areas in which the law relates to children unmediated by the institutions of the family, the school, or the justice system. So we'll look at free speech rights of children generally, of contract, the infancy doctrine and contract law, tort liability, the rights of minors to sexual agency. We'll look at that part will deal with access to abortion and contraception, and more generally to the mature minor doctrine, under which minors can make medical decisions.
A lot is at stake, and this is what the law is trying to do, is protect the child and also protect family integrity. And at the same time, in our country, and this is rooted in the constitutional protection for families, is to respect pluralism. And so there are a lot of different family practices in the United States that many people might not agree with and certainly wouldn't follow for their own families, but the Constitution says so long as you are not crossing a boundary, and this is part of what the restatement is about, is trying to articulate that boundary, parents can raise children as they see fit.
Well, it certainly presents a distinctive set of challenges in that the law here has been evolving very significantly. And so looking back at the law 30, 50 years ago, certainly would be a very different world. And I think that's another one of the great contributions that will come from this project is that, for time immemorial, children have been thought of as different in the law, and there's been a sort of obvious quality to that and strong intuitions that children ought to be treated differently in the law. But for so much of time, legal principles have been decided in this area based on intuition and personal observation. But now we begin to have really rigorous social science evidence to bring to bear on these questions that underlie the legal rules, questions of deliberation and ability to decision-making capacity. So it's very exciting to be able to draw on this and to draw on a rapidly developing area of judicial case law to try to bring greater understanding.
The Restatement on Children in the Law is extremely valuable. The law that affects children, the law that addresses children's rights and needs and the obligations of others to children, the law that regulates many aspects of their lives, grew up in a very piecemeal fashion. There are some areas of law that were particularly focused on children, always have been. There are other areas of the law that really developed for adults and they were applied to children. And over time, we have an evolving understanding, appreciation of children as human beings, and the law has tried to keep pace with that developing understanding, but it really has produced a kind of patchwork, and there's a certain incoherence in the overall picture of the law that affects children. So I think one of the great values of a restatement is it allows a kind of bringing together a sort of identification of points of coherence and in the process a development of a greater coherence of the law affecting children.